Hi, everyone. My name is Brandon Ellis. I'm the author of two sci-fi and fantasy book series, the Star Guild Saga and the award-winning Pure Light series. And welcome to my videocast, where I interview the best in sci-fi and fantasy. Today we have John L. Monk, author of several books such as Hell's Children, a post-apocalyptic survival thriller, Thief's Odyssey, and The Jenkins Cycle, which is a three-book series with titles Kick, Fool's Ride, and Hopper House. John lives in Virginia with his wife, Dorothy. He's a writer with a degree in cultural anthropology. He boldly does the dishes, roots out evil wherever it lurks, and writes his own stunts. How you doing, John?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
Very good. So, my first question. When did you first decide that you're going to become a writer?
Okay. Well, I guess it's a more complicated answer than it probably needs to be. But I think I turned 40, had my midlife crisis, and decided that my lifelong desire to be a writer needed to be fulfilled. I needed to stop playing World of Warcraft. I needed to get serious and write those books. And that's what I did. I wrote Kick. But I started really admiring writers and wanting to write and do that thing, after I read like Ursula Le Guin's Wizard of Earthsea and then follow that by Terry Brooks's, I think it was The Wish Song of Shannara, which is like the third book in that series. I started with book 3. Anyway, I started writing short stuff for my English classes. I used to love it when they were like, hey, you got to write a short story. And I would just take all the names and places and all the stuff that happened, and I would rewrite everything. And, that was just a blast for me. And then, I started writing short stories and submitting into magazines and getting rejected. And I never got accepted because I didn't keep at it, I think. And I wrote some half novels that never got finished. They were terrible. And I turned 40 and I got serious and wrote Kick.
And how did Kick go when you first started writing it? Actually, how did it go when you released it?
It's funny. I think I did. I hate the idea that I'm tooting my own horn, but I will say the quality of writing was much, much better than anything else I did before. I started mindfully reading authors that I admired and figuring out why it is those things worked, what it was about those books that actually, worked. I looked up the mechanics on how to get all the punctuation right, not just how I felt, I looked up, I read some books on craft. There's a really good one called How Not to Write a Novel. If you read that, you're going to be guilty of every sin in that book. But it's hilariously written, lots of great advice. So I read that, and I put it out, and it was well received. And I've got like 306 reviews, not that I'm counting. And they're mostly positive. And, people seem to like it. I wrote, they like book 2, they like book 3. There's an audiobook. I get some good comments on the audiobook. So I think I got really lucky because a lot of people, their first book doesn't go so well. But as far as sales, it's never been something that sold well. So real quick for your viewers, it's a book about a guy who dies and he keeps coming back to life by possessing the bodies of awful people. And he doesn't have to do awful things. He usually does good things, but he's only in their bodies for like 3 weeks at a time. And he's got to kind of like figure out what they've done, stop them before he's kicked out. In other words, if he's kicked out, then they become themselves again and can go around being evil. So like he's got to kind of find a way to jibe his own morality with like some awful decisions, and of course, there's characters he meets along the way, like pitiful characters, heroic characters, things like that. It's a good story, but it's difficult for people to go, like, I can't imagine anybody sitting down on Amazon going, I want to read a book about a guy who dies and comes back to life and also in the bodies of bad people and there's no way you can do that. But you can say, book about dragons or post-apocalyptic or urban fantasy or wizards. These things are easy to find. And that's why if you write a book like that, one, you're going to have a lot of competition. Two, there's just going to be tons of readers waiting for you if you can just kind of get out there. And that's what happened to Hell's Children. It was in a popular genre. It was very easy to understand. and it had a provocative title and it had a nice cover, and it did really well. It's still doing pretty well for a book that's been out for, like maybe 5 months or so.
And what's Hell's Children about?
September, October, 5 months. Yeah. Hell's Children is sort of like it's kind of like Lord of the Flies, except for post-apocalyptic. That's the hook. People are looking for a post-apocalyptic novel. They might not be looking for a Lord of the Flies novel, though. So I've suffered a tiny bit there, but not much.
What do you mean by you suffered?
Well, people who are looking for post-apocalyptic, the tropes that they kind of want are, nuclear war. Or a plague has wiped out humanity, and there's a couple of ragtag survivors and bandits, and they have to get all the way over there to find their loved one, or some kind of like military guys on over here, and all these prisoners and stuff like that banded together, and they're like Mad Maxing the population and everything. That's what people expect from post-apocalyptic. My story is about a plague that wipes out all the adults. All the adults in the world die, leaving pretty much anybody younger than about 15 has a 20% chance to survive. Siblings tend to survive together. So there's a brother and sister in the story that are two of the main characters. And the main character is this guy named Jack, who was raised by like sort of survivalist parents. And he kind of saves the day and helps a lot of kids to survive. So, yeah. So anyway, that's my post-apocalyptic novel, and it's my most successful story yet.
Did they figure out in the book what the plague was?
No, I didn't describe how do we put this? I never gave a reason for it. And I love stories like that don't give a reason. But I do describe the effects. The effects before the scientists all died, was that it attacked the mitochondria and cells. And if you know anything about biology, the mitochondria is what actually drives the ATP process, which gives you energy. So as the mitochondria started dying, people got weaker and weaker and weaker, and they just couldn't move. And then eventually their organs would break down or stop working, and then they just would die in bed. So we have an entire world of people who've died in bed. It's really pathetic, or pitiful, not pathetic. I mean, there's it's now a truism. I'm trying to write book 2. It's all now like sort of not a truism either. It's just a thing in the story where you go into a house, you smell, there's a scent of death somewhere, and if you need some rubbing alcohol from a medicine cabinet, the main character will run upstairs, walk past the dead bodies in bed, go get the rubbing alcohol, go downstairs, clean their wounds or whatever, and then, move on. Or if they need some water, they'll go tap the hot water tank and move on, knowing that there's dead bodies upstairs. Maybe they'll see one on the couch. Maybe the guy died in front of the TV, and it's just like, oh, that's a little bit, they just don't look at it.
Mm-hmm. And that was your most popular so far, right?
Yes. It sells pretty well still.
And it was up in the top 1,000.
It was. Actually, I got to as high as, not that I'm counting, 626.2.
Nice.
I threw the decimal on there for.
And you said it was up there for about 5 months, or is that it's been out for about 5 months?
It released on June 8th. It's now November, a little bit beyond that. Did you get me?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
You kind of went out for a little second.
Yeah,
what was your reaction when that happened?
Well, it's funny. It probably wasn't like the most positive reaction. It was. I wanted to write book 2, but I just sort of was like just watching kind of my sales and just going, all right, wow, I got that many sales today, and just sort of going around in a daze. And it's very hard to get inspired to write a story when you're going around in a daze. It's the most unprofessional attitude ever. And It reminds me of one of the Rockies, one of the 1 through 3, when, Rocky Balboa was all, he had won the championship. He's all happy. He's got hair gel and he's all oiled up, and he's like, hey, and he's got great suits, and Everybody wants them. And then Mr. T is down in the basement, like lifting cinder blocks with string, and he's like, he's hungry, and he comes out and he kicks his ass. So
Yes.
I wrote Hell's Children. I was kind of like Mr. T, and as the sales were coming in, I was kind of like immediately turned into Rocky, with the nice suits and everything like that. I don't know. It's kind of like that. I just got kind of like, I should have actually not even looked at the sales, or I should have wrote book 1 and 2, then released them both together. But then that mystical, if I'd done that though, that mystical soupy weirdness that causes a book to become successful might not have happened. Like the lightning might not have struck. I might not have been in the right spot for the lightning to strike.
Yeah, very true. So when you're writing Hell's Children, how'd you come up with the plot? Did it just come to your head? Did you do research?
It's interesting. I wanted to write a post-apocalyptic novel, and I wanted to be, because I'm a writer and I love to give myself difficulties, I wanted it to be different. Now, writing different is good if you're Andy Weir writing The Martian and lightning strikes. Writing different is not good when you're writing Kick, for example, and people who read it like it, but nobody's looking for it. So for whatever reason, I still want it to be a little different. And I thought, I don't know a lot about military weapons and jeeps, and I don't know a lot about, I don't know a lot about engineering and medicine and things like that. But I do remember being a kid, and I remember how ignorant I was, and I can kind of imagine how much lack of knowledge they have. So I thought, if I write about kids, my ignorance, my lack of knowledge becomes almost like an asset. The kids don't know how to jumpstart a Jeep. I don't know how to jumpstart a Jeep. So they just walk past the Jeep. Now, that's actually somewhat, there is jumpstarting in the story, but, this is just an example,
Yeah. And you had to probably do research on how to jumpstart that. Yeah.
I did, and that's the thing. So whenever you have to do research, it slows down the writing process. When you're writing about kids, though, who don't know anything, you don't have a lot of research moments. You just have a lot of bang, bang, shoot them up, personality issues, going out scavenging for food. It doesn't take a lot of knowledge to know that you can go into a safe way and grab something off the shelf. But, I made a little. The book isn't that easy for the kids. People died, over the course of about almost a year. Like they would get sick, and they would get weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker, and then at some point they couldn't leave the house, and at some point they just died. So during that time, all the shelves have been completely stripped. So if you're not dying from the sickness, as I call it, you're dying of starvation.
Okay. So you have written books in science fiction and fantasy. What is the appeal to science fiction and fantasy for you?
Well, it was what I started with when I was younger. I've always read to escape. You're reading about dragons and stuff. You're not in your house with your overbearing parents, or got to go to school in the morning, or what I'm going to do today. I feel bored. There's nothing on TV. Well, in the book, you're a hero. You're in a spaceship flying around. There's aliens coming after you. And, that's just cool. The more remote from your everyday experiences, the better. And so I've grown since then. I read other things now. I read one of my favorite series of all time is the Spencer series by Robert B. Parker. And of course, that's just a bunch of detective novels, hard-boiled. Yeah.
How do you come up with your characters' names and personalities?
Well, the names, I pretty much just, for the most part, I just choose the first name that comes to me. Jack. Oh, Jack, I wanted it to be like a simple, easy name. Everybody knows a guy named Jack. There's so many Jacks that could be a million personalities. But I wouldn't do like Leopold, for my character in sort of our modern world, even though it's speculative, the plague, or the flies kind of thing. I didn't want anything that was going to be too evocative of something that they already think they know about. So I said, Jack. And I tended to do the same thing for the rest of the kids. And like, there's a bad guy in the story, right? But he calls himself Blaze because he's got red hair, and his sister, the pyromaniac, thought it would be a good name for him.
Yeah.
So like, I gave him a special name. He's the bad guy. He gets a special name.
Ooh, okay.
Personalities. Sorry. Yeah, I just pull them up from my past experiences. That kind of thing.
Yeah, people people you've watched. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
What makes an element, or what elements make up a good book, in your opinion?
Sure. Probably the two most important are, one, you have to have the stakes. There's got to be some stakes involved, not the kind you eat, but the stake. It's got to be. You got to worry about the characters. It can't be. It's really it's hard to put your finger on, but you have to really worry, like, oh my God, I hope they live, or I hope that their soul is not destroyed by a bad decision because I really like him or her.
Yeah.
So the way you do that is you make a lovable character, and you give them I don't know, some sort of a threat on the horizon that dooms them in some way. They'll lose if it's romance. They won't get the man of their dreams, or if it's a quirky romance, not only won't they get the man of their dreams, but their worst enemy is going to get their man of their dreams. So you've really upped the stakes. Not only is their soul going to be destroyed, but the evil one is going to ascend to heaven. And then your main character is going to be a spinster. So really, you just have to really just ramp up the stakes. Now, the other thing is you need a sense of transport. And I forget what author I first heard say that. It didn't come directly from me, but I agree with it 100%. You need a sense that, like, you're taking somebody out of their world and putting it somewhere else. So obviously any fantasy novel you read is a massive sense of transport. You take people away. And that's why fantasy novels tend to be giant phone books. I mean, they're packing on the pages. Because people who read fantasy, they want to get out of this world with politics and everything like that, and wars that are on their doorsteps maybe, or on their televisions with real people. And they want to just say, oh, just take me away, and I don't want to come back. So I'm going to read Harry Potter, and they better be big. And there better be a lot of books because I don't want to leave.
Yeah. And I see you co-authored another book with Jay Thorne, American Dream Hunters.
Demon Hunter.
Yeah. What was that?
American Demon Hunters.
Oh, what did I say? Dream?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. And it delves into the paranormal. And well, first off, what was it like to co-author a book with somebody?
It wasn't too bad. I got my guidelines, things I could do, things I couldn't do. I had to read his first book, American Demon Hunters. It's a full-length novel. Mine is a novella set in that world using his main characters. I wrote pretty much the whole thing, and then he kind of came in and helped me keep it consistent. He helped me fix the writing closer to his style. So, I mean, it wasn't like, there's many ways to co-author. Doesn't mean you didn't co-author. There's many ways. Some people, like Sean Platt and David Wright and Johnny B. Truant, for example, Sean will write out the plot, essentially. He'll write the beats. He'll say, main character goes to the store. Main character sees bad guy at store. Main character has to kill bad guy. Main character gets arrested by a cop. And the other people kind of go in and then flush those out. And then maybe Dave goes through and does other things. And Jay was really cool. He didn't mind. Like, my particular story was a little bit closer into the humor side of things. Main character is this Dungeons and Dragons playing geek who gets kicked out of a game store where he used to play games every Friday Night Magic, and now he's sworn revenge, and he is able to contact dark forces that give him real power. And he's completely ridiculous. He is the comic book guy from The Simpsons, if you want to think about it. Imagine that guy with real power, and imagining he had enemies that he, the hot chick from the comic book store. She'll finally get hers,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And the main characters, of course, are serious. They're his characters, Jay's characters. And just because they're just dealing with this ridiculous guy who's got real power. There's plenty of ridiculous people out there, but you give them real power. It's interesting.
So how did you get a hold of Jay Thorne?
Friend of a friend kind of thing. I sort of knew Jay. I had sent him a note because I heard him on the Rocking Self-Publishing podcast. I'm like, dude, you're on that show. I love that show. You sound like a cool guy, man. And he's like, thanks. And, we became Facebook friends, but we never really got into it. But I was more friends with Zach Bohannon. And, Zach got wind that Jay was doing this thing. And, Zach had read my book and then suggested me to Jay. And Jay read my book and, Kick, actually. And they both liked it. And so I got an invite,
Oh, cool. And who's Zach Bohannon?
Bohannon. He's a mostly horror writer. I think he's moving into some other genres right now. But he wrote a series about zombies called Empty Bodies. But he's not a zombie author or anything. He writes a lot of different stuff. Great author, great writer, really cool guy. Both Jay and him are just the coolest. And you can hear them on the Horror Writers podcast. It is a really fun, interesting podcast. David Wright is frequently on there. I've been on there twice.
Okay. And that book, American Demon Hunters, delves into the paranormal. I've asked you this last time. Have you had any paranormal-like experiences?
For my personal experiences, I've always been the kind of where maybe you haven't heard from someone for 10 years and you just thought about them, out of the blue, and then suddenly you get a call from that person, like those kinds of like spooky, creepy things. But I think I mentioned once to you that my brother-in-law, who's this sort of lawyer guy, he's not a braggart. He's the last guy in the world that would make stuff up. When he was younger in college, he went over to Italy, and he was at a hotel, and he went to go to his closet. He opened it up, and there was a woman in there, and she was like staring at him. And he freaked out and sort of backed away. And then
I don't know how you wouldn't freak out. That would be totally freaky.
Yeah, and he looks, and she's gone. So he went down. I think he told the proprietor. He's like, "Oh yeah, and she's there sometimes," kind of thing. Like, and it's stuff like that really makes you go, because my brother-in-law just doesn't spin tales like that. He's not like constantly. You go to his house, you're not going to find books on how angels are real and reincarnation and things like that. In fact, he's really into science. He likes science. So,
last question: what do you want your readers to get out of your books?
Well, I want them to. I don't want them to be bored. I don't want them thinking they wasted their money. So there's some negative things. But I guess more positive. I need to be more positive. I want them to have a rip-roaring good time. I want them to feel that they've read something they've never read before, even if it's, I think everything's been written, but not the way I write them, and or you, for example. And I want them to really just enjoy themselves and recommend me to people and, sign up to my list and go, oh my God, when are you writing the next one, you lazy bastard? And I want the basic stuff, I don't need much. I don't need them to be like, oh my God, you're a god. I don't need groupies, weird mail,
Yeah. Well, I wanted to thank you very much for coming on to my video cast. You've been a trooper with me, and I appreciate that so much.
No, thank you. I'm really happy to be here. You're cool.